It's better be unmuted then. And yes, the record button's on. Thank you very much, Kusa David. That's, yeah, very kind. Yeah. Yes, and indeed, actually, it was something I made that is right behind me that pointed me towards talking about the tree as symbol. So yes, that there is a batik tree. So it was my first attempt at batik, and it was also within the first year of my meeting the Dharma, and it was inspired by the Bodhi tree, so the tree under which the Buddha gained enlightenment, and it's only reappeared in my life recently. It's covering our inverter, so here in the attic. But yeah, really enjoyed having it around again. Okay, so yeah, the tree as symbol. Yeah, it's been interesting pondering what to say about the tree as symbol. Because, yeah, I mean, trees have such complex, rich iconography in all world faiths, really. In Christianity, with the tree of life, tree of knowledge, Islam, the ancient Vedic texts, the Vedic cosmology. Yeah, so in a way, what I want to point to in this talk is getting us contemplating what is our conditioning, what are some of the strands of our conditioning around nature and the tree as symbol. We might have various strands of conditioning and a sense of disconnection with some aspects of nature. So it's important to notice that and connect with that. So in doing this talk, I want to drop in some seeds for our own tree, grove or forest to take root. So I was really pleased that Kame Siri chose to start the meditation with us being a tree, because actually one of my early significant experiences in meditation at Taraloka was very much a tree-like sense of feeling rooted and actually feeling a sense of tree bark and treeness. Yeah, it was a very pleasurable experience in meditation. So trees are very central in the Buddha's life. So trees appear as characters of backgrounds in the Buddha's life. So his mother was said to have been had to stop off on the way back to her own family, stopped off in a park, and she was actually holding on to a branch of a tree when she gave birth to him. He became enlightened sitting underneath a tree, and that tree has become a significant focus of devotion. And then he died between trees, on a platform between trees. He asked to have a place set up between two trees where he died. So, and they're a constant background through his teaching, his life as the Buddha. He taught underneath trees in the shade, the cool of trees, in groves, in parks. And yeah, like with Aryabhachan's talk on the stupa, and going back to Padmasaki's talk on the lotus, and indeed Karanavacha's talk on the naga, Muchalinda. These are features of very earliest Buddhist iconography, because in the earliest imagery of Buddhism, the actual Buddha, the figure of the Buddha, was not depicted. So I've just got a few images I want to share just around that. I'll just have to set up momentarily, because I'm going to share from my phone. So, right. Okay, is that visible? Okay, so I've just picked some early images. So this one takes us back to Karen Avacha's talk. It does actually feature the Naga. So with this is Muchalinda. This is a throne or a seat, which is empty. So that's representing the Buddha. This is Muchalinda, and this is the Bodhi tree. So this is a scene depicting an aspect of his enlightenment. So, and this takes us back to Aryabhachin's talk. This is actually an image from one of the stupas that he showed. I've forgotten the name of it, but because I'm not being so good on detail. Yeah, but this is an image. So again, it's that image of the tree. This is an image of the Bodhi tree. So that's there representing the enlightenment of the Buddha. And this one I particularly like because this really shows the leaves of the Bodhi tree. So they're heart-shaped leaves. It's a fig. It's a variety of fig, and it's actually called religiosa. Figus religiosa is actually the Latin name for the tree. And here is a depiction, another scene from the Buddha in his process of attaining enlightenment. This is the attack of Mara. So again, it's that aspect of the empty chair and the tree above. And just one more. This one, I'm not quite sure what scene it is, but I just liked the imagery, the tree. So other people were depicted, but again, yeah, the Buddha just wasn't depicted. And then we come on to, this is a picture from the internet. This is the Bodhi tree as it is now, with a monk in front. And then I've got two images that are actually from our pilgrimage that Aryabhachin referenced. And you can actually see Aryabhachin there, the back of his head. And when we arrived in Bodh Gaya, we arrived at the Mahabodhi temple, we arrived at the Bodhi tree. It was actually an eclipse of the moon happened. So there you can just see a little bit of the moon. So it wasn't great conditions for taking pictures, but you had to actually pay to take your camera in. So it was the only instance I took my camera in was that evening, and it was very magical, the fact there were such amazing conditions. The Bodhi temple and the Bodhi tree. And this is the Bodhi tree from just down in front of it, with a Tibetan shrine set up there. We had some amazing Tibetan pujas happening when we were there. So yeah, that's the imagery for now. So what I've been interested in recently in terms of my connection with Buddhism, Buddhist teachings, is an approach of looking at the Buddha's teachings in relation to the context of his time, the views and perspectives that we can see him challenging and overturning in the suttas. He was so skilled in communication. He would avoid an adversarial approach with his opponents, the Brahmins particularly. He'd really hear what they had to say, but then he'd give their terms and teachings radical new meanings. He was a great thinker. He turned sacrifice and ritual into ethics, meditation, and wisdom. So from my interest in that, I've been pondering, what was his relationship to the Bodhi tree in the context of that time? It's a very different world from the world we're looking at it from. So just trying to tune into what would have been the relationship to nature and trees at the time. So reading around and looking at stuff, I get the impression, the culture was a much more animistic, that people would have had a general sense of nature, a sense of awe and reverence, and seeing nature as being inhabited by forces and spirits. And much of India would have been forested back then, as the UK was in the past. It's since been deforested somewhat. Trees would have provided medicine, food, shelter in times of heat and rain. And the culture of the time pursued ritual and sacrifice to gain assistance from nature and from the trees. There would have been, a reverence for very ancient trees to assist people in their lives and welfare. So the Buddha tried various things in his spiritual life from going forth, learning meditation practices, ascetic practices, starving, the practices of the time, the approaches of the time, and he rejected them. So he sat under the tree, he gained enlightenment. It was a whole different way of seeing things. He gained freedom. And I find it interesting that after that experience, he's said to have spent 7 days a short distance away from the tree, gazing at the tree. So, yeah, I've been pondering, what was that? What was going on there? What was his relationship? Because he'd stepped away from superstition, and tree spirits are mentioned in the suttas, and respect for nature and very much ethics applied to animals and to the care of others. But what would his relationship, what would his consideration of the tree be? And I want to invite you now, actually, to do a short contemplation. It's just a short little journey. If you don't wish to do it, that's fine. But if you wish to just sit, close your eyes or keep your eyes softly open, we're just going to do a little imaginative journey. So if you want to just connect with your body, a sense of ease, say having your eyes open and closed. And this isn't about necessarily seeing anything, but just noticing a felt sense. So just allowing yourself to bring up in imagination a sense of yourself in a landscape. And the senses that you notice that with, it may be colour, sound, smell. It may be a sense of the light or heat or cool. And whether the landscape is open or forested, just noticing that. If you bring to mind a landscape, a natural landscape, what comes to mind? What appears in your thought, in your mind? And just taking time to notice the sense experience of it. The temperature, the smells, the quality of the light. And then just noticing a tree a little way off, bringing the tree more and more into the awareness. Just noticing the size, the shape, the light, and moving towards that tree. Below the tree, near the trunk, there's a comfortable place to sit. And whatever comfortable seat is appropriate for you right now, you can go up to that seat and sit down. A relaxed, open, sitting posture. Maybe noticing the quality of the earth below you, the texture of the ground, any smells, the light, the atmosphere of the place. A sense of breathing, the body breathing with the tree breathing. A sense of being accompanied by the tree. The roots reaching down deep into the earth. The branches reaching up into the sky. The light filtering through the tree. And all the beings that live on the tree, around the tree. the whole life system. Just being with the tree. And then slowly, slowly getting up, walking a little way away from the tree, turning and contemplating the tree. Just standing for a moment to take the tree in and notice if there's any response to the tree, emotional or otherwise. Just notice. And then letting go of that image, just letting it fade. And taking us back to the Buddha gazing at the Bodhi tree, the tree under which he'd gained enlightenment. For me, I started to see it as very much connecting with the deep appreciation and acknowledgement of the conditions, all the conditions that had supported him in his quest for awakening. So the tree had provided probably a comfortable atmosphere, shade, shelter at that final stage of his quest. When he sat, he made that vow that he would not get up from that seat till he had gained enlightenment. And the tree had witnessed that, gave him that atmosphere, that context in which to pursue his goal. So from that, I started to make more of a connection. I've started to make more of a kind of felt sense of connection with the importance of appreciation and gratitude, and being willing to see and acknowledge and appreciate all that helps in my spiritual life, in my material life. So I feel more connected with how a tree, in a way, symbolically, can bridge the material and the spiritual. As living entities, they are so vital, as King Siri said earlier. They are vital to our health and well-being. They give us oxygen, they give us moisture in the air. They keep the ground stable. They have whole ecosystems of creatures living in, on, around them. They just are an integral part of our life, our world, our existence. And it's just the more I know, the more they kind of seem such amazing beings. You know, the way they connect through the ground with the mycorrhizations, they actually communicate with each other if there's threat or danger. Yeah, so I feel a sense of gratitude and awe and a sense of mystery that we don't know everything there is to know that goes on with trees. And a sense of also symbolically they're uniting sky and earth, light and dark, known and unknown, material and spiritual. So yeah, it's interesting to look at our conditioning. I think much of our conditioning, so from Christianity, but also from recent industrializations, scientific materialism, we can tend to have a bit of a utilitarian relationship with nature. And it made me recall a story that Sangha Night tells that some of you will know very well. So he says, some years ago, in the Himalayan region of India, I went for a walk with a Nepalese friend. And we happened to stop at the foot of a magnificent pine tree. As I looked up at the smooth trunk and the mass of deep green foliage, I could not help exclaiming, "Well, isn't that a beautiful tree?" My Nepalese friend, who was standing beside me, said, "Oh yes, it is a beautiful tree. There's enough firewood there for a whole winter. He did not see the tree at all. All he saw was a certain quantity of firewood. Most of us look at the world of material things in just this way. And it's an attitude from which we have to free ourselves. We have to learn to look at things for themselves, in their own sake, for their own sake, untainted by any trace of subjectivity, personal preference, or desire. So yes, as I referred to, we all have well, we don't all, I think, well, maybe all of us, certainly in Europe, in Western Europe, in the UK, we have a certain amount of Christian conditioning. You know, there has been an awful lot. And so, you know, the sense of animism, that sense of the spirit in nature, has been demonized. I know I'm short on time, but I'm going to carry on anyway. I'm just going to read a little bit, which brought this home to me, from Witchwood by John Buchan, so a rather aged book, and it's set in Scots. So I don't think there's too much Scots dialect in this bit. But, the evening deepened in the hollows, though the hilltops were still faintly bright. The great wood seemed now to be a moving thing, a flood which lapped and surged, and might at any moment overflow the sandspit, which was Woody Lee. Again the minister laughed at himself, but without conviction. It must be an eerie life under the shadow of that ancient formless thing. Woody Lee could not be quite as other parishes, or its folk like other folk. The wood, this hoary wood of Caledon, must dominate their thoughts and form their characters. Had not someone called it the Black Wood? Yes, they had spoken of it that afternoon. Mr. Muirhead had admitted that it must be queer to live so near it, and Mr. Fordyce had shaken his head solemnly and hinted at tales that would be told if the trees could speak. Did the devil use the place as a stronghold and seduce the foolish into its shadows? Yeah, so the demonization of the forest, the woods. And it does lurk in our experience. But then also it was incorporated into Christian iconography in certain ways, which I'm fascinated by. So I'm just going to do a couple more images and then only a little bit more. Okay, so here is a cross in Derbyshire, a funeral, a gravestone, a Celtic cross with very much with plant images. Here's some columns from Southwell Minster. Here's a bit more, plant images. And this, it only really struck me now that actually a lot of cathedrals, they actually look like groves of trees. You know, they're very much, these are very tree-like, but it's separate. It's separated us from nature, hasn't it? In the stone and the grandeur. I mean, they're very beautiful, significant places. But yeah, it's that separation from nature. So I'll stop sharing. Oh, I did have some more, but actually, no, I will share again. Okay. Yeah, and here we come on to the natural. This is some trees at Nine Ladies up in Derbyshire. So yeah, it's just different kind of place. And this is actually in Brittany. This is a Druid graveyard, is what it's said to be. So trees and groves. So I love that combination of stones and the trees that are grown in amongst them. So just a little more. So how do we find our authentic connection with the natural world? for me, yeah, starting to see that sense of wonder, of appreciation, allowing our imaginative connections. I've done several yatras with Buddha Field, which are meditative, ritualistic walking retreats, often along ancient routes and visiting ancient sites such as the Wayland Smithy in Stonehenge, Glastonbury and Avebury. They have felt very integrating and expansive for me. The sense of journeying on foot along paths that so many have used before, to sites that have been so meaningful to people of this land in the past, but then bringing into that Buddhist practice, you know, doing it in a Buddhist context and bringing Buddhist rituals to those places. So yeah, something that stayed with me in my Buddhist life has been something I came across early in my studies, and that was Sangharakshita's encouraging paganism. So in the Bodhisattva ideal, Sangharakshita says that the old myths and legends and practices should be studied so that we can feel our way back into them. That it's important for all of us, including Buddhists, to try and establish contact with our pre-Christian past. And he says, I've sometimes thought that Buddhism will only become widespread in the West after a revival of paganism. And then in Ritual and Devotion, he says, there is no incompatibility between Buddhism and animism. They really go together, just as paganism and Buddhism do. Animism is considered quite healthy. I sometimes wish that in Britain we had more sacred rocks, trees and groves. Unfortunately, there are not many of those sacred sites left. But then he goes on to say, nonetheless, while Buddhism has nothing to say against worshipping hills, trees or rocks, it does take exception to going for refuge to them. If we do that, we are taking nature as our highest value, expecting something from nature which it cannot give. The Buddhist path is a search for the unconditioned, and nature cannot give us that, even though it can manifest qualities which are worthy of reverence. Yeah, so I want to suggest contemplating how is the tree an authentic, meaningful symbol for us personally? How do we relate to nature in general? Do we want to cultivate or deepen our relationship to nature or not? And does paganism appeal, or some other aspect of connecting? It was interesting, I didn't put it in here, but Sangharakshita talks us as being like flowers in a vase with our roots cut off. The fact that our connection to our ancient spiritual past has been disconnected by Christianity. Yeah, so it's interesting to ponder how to make those, but in authentic. So that's what I come against, is to be authentic and meaningful. And I'll end there. So